4 minutes late. I was just out. Got a story to gotta tell y'all. But before I tell y'all the story and get into anything that just happened while I was just out just now, we're gonna get into this. Please do remember that the New Right Party channel and the New Red Party show is sponsored by patriots like you. And as long as you're sending these donations, it allows me to create the content that will continue to make these motherfuckers sick. As you were.
He's on fire! Versus the family and my family entertainment and his team no sleep. Flossy high and yeah we made it.
Excuse the tardiness, people. I'm sorry that I had to get in here and run in here. Me and the missus was out, and we went to go pick up another Death of a Nation. To Dina, you will be getting your Death of a Nation. We went and picked up a brand new one for you because I didn't want to give you something that we opened. You will still receive a letter of gratitude from us. You will receive a letter still from us, a letter of thanks from us, but you will receive your own copy, brand new, unopened. Hold on. We thought it was important for you to be able to have the ability to be able to open up your own pack yourself. So we was out getting it. So we went out to Walmart while I'm looking and getting everything situated. I'm about to tell you guys. So yeah, we go out to Walmart and I always tell my wife it's important to keep her gun on her. Cause, you know, we was just at the weed spot the other day. And when we went there, the guy who works in there, he says, do you have any firearms on you or any knives or any weapons you may want to leave in the car? And I told him the only weapons I have is my fist. I wasn't joking. And I was dead serious when I said it. I wasn't trying to be funny. My wife doesn't have fists. So the only weapon she has that she can carry is her guns. It's her guns. So I always tell her how important it is to make sure that she has the guns with her when she leaves the house. And today, the main reason why I told her that she needs to have it, it came to today. Today we were leaving our Walmart. We left out of the entrance opposite to the one we entered in. And we noticed that this black piece of shit was running with this young white girl's bag, and this white boy chased behind him to stop him, I guess, from running off. The dude had a knife in his hands, and he was ready to fucking attack and cut up the white guy who came to get the pocketbook from back that the guy stole. We didn't have the gun on us because if we did, I would have definitely I would have pulled out on him. I would have made him get down and on his knees, and he would have been arrested. He would have got arrested. We wasn't gonna just let him do that. But so I had to rush her off to the car, and go to the car, get the firearm, and then walk the girl that was just robbed back to her car, because of course the assailant, he ran away when he seen people, all running towards the scene. He ran away, but he had a knife in his hands. He had a knife in his hands, and if he wanted to, he could have killed that guy that stood up for that young lady. He could have took his life like it was nothing. And I'm saying that to tell you guys that it's important. It's very, 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 very fucking important that women in your life, the women in your family, are carrying. Remember what I just said to you. It's important that the women in your life, if you love her, get her a gun. Because that young lady today, had she had a firearm, one, her purse wouldn't have been snatched, and two, she wouldn't have been dealing with the sheer fact of feeling like a victim right now. For having someone pull a knife out on you and tell you to give something that belongs to you up just because they feel like they want to take it from you. That's what I'm talking about. That shit. That's what I'm talking about. Hold on, y'all. I want to move this mic over. May not like the noise, but whatever. I want to move this mic over and around. Because one of the new subscribers told me that he can barely hear me. He said he don't know what's going on. I think maybe he could be watching some older shows. I'm not sure what he was watching, but just to make sure, let me just take this mic down now and just kind of bring it close to me. We're gonna have the studio changed around. We're about to get into part 2 of Black Genocide. It's important that you guys see the rest of this, man. It's important that you guys see the rest of this. One, you'll have some of your black friends who never knew the things that you learned from this. Some of you already know about this. Some of you knew about it but didn't know the specifics. But all in all, this is a documentary that Dina just treed out. I don't know. Okay, let me see. Put that there. Drop that behind there. Okie. I hope that sounds better for everybody. I hope that does sound better. I hope that it sounds better. I hope that it sounds better. I hope that it sounds better. Okay, now let's get back into this. Let's bring this back up. We're going to go in the situation room with it. We'll go in the situation room with it. Let's see. Let's pull this up. How does it do? I sound louder to you, or do I still sound the same? Let me know if I sound louder. Annie and Dina, let me know if I sound louder. Let me know if I sound better. Let me know if I sound louder. Oh, we don't want that showing, do we? That might be a little bit better. It's right there. All right, let me see. Let's pull up this news. This one news we got to pull up. All right, cool. We're going to bring this up. We're going to get back into this. I was just telling them the story, baby. Thank you, baby. I was just telling them the story about what happened in Walmart.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I was just telling them.
You're
You're welcome. I'm just mad we didn't have a gun on us right then and there, because I'd have whooped his ass. I'd have whooped his ass. And we'd have had a citizen's arrest on that motherfucking hands. Yeah, anybody who hearing me say that shit, you motherfucking right. You outside robbing women, you deserve to be fucked up. Don't nobody deserve to have no fucking remorse for you. I got a fucking mother, pussy. I can't stand that shit. How the fuck you find yourself outside robbing fucking women? Where the fuck are the men at? Like, I don't understand this shit. Who is raising these motherfuckers to be outside and doing this stupid shit in the fucking first place? Because it's not what real men do. It's not. It's not what real men do. Go out, and I'm not condoning robbing anybody, but if you're going to rob somebody, go rob a fucking man. You know what I mean? Like, go rob a man. Go fuck with them. Don't fuck with no fucking women. You don't fucking rob no fucking women. Pussy ass motherfucker, man. And what makes me even more upset is that this, I mean, he shouldn't be any fucking color, but when I see black motherfuckers doing this shit, that shit really fucking, it really gets me fucking tight. Okay, this shit is blowing my eyes right now. I'm gonna have to erase this and do this shit all over again. What the fuck? Yeah, that shit just get me fucking tight, people. I can't even hold you, man. That shit get me really, really upset. All these motherfuckers out here, and then this motherfucker, he's young. You could look at him and tell, you know, he was young. You know, he was young. He could have went out and did some shit for his motherfucking self. He didn't have to take advantage of nobody or try to rob no motherfucking body. Walter in the building. Shout out to Walter Davis in the building. All right, now we got that. Let's get back into this other part of this documentary so we can finish this off and then critique some new news.
The civil rights elite has forgotten the lives of unborn black children and has joined those who choose to kill them. Unbelievable! They have forgotten that in the past, racists snatched black babies from their mother's arms and sold them into slavery. Today they snatch them from their mother's womb and throw them in the garbage. Ishmael Hernandez, Executive Director, African and Caribbean American Center, 2003.
When we look at this issue of civil rights leaders who sell out, even when they clearly know that birth control and abortion are being used for black genocide, we need to understand that by the 1960s...
We broke that down yesterday, Eric G. We talked about that yesterday.
Population control, especially black population control, had become almost a religion for America's white power structure. And from the start, they made it clear that if you crossed them, or if you challenged their agenda, they would chop you off at the knees. And that remains true to this day. Whether you're talking about the liberal social engineers who control the Democratic Party, or the wealthy elitists who control the Republican Party, or the media, or the academic community, these people have created a kind of family planning cartel that does not tolerate dissent. And they have always been especially ruthless about this when it comes to African Americans. A perfect example of this was seen in the case of Samuel Yet. Mr. Yet was an award-winning journalist who had earned a master's degree from Indiana University, was a U.S. Air Force veteran of the Korean War, and served as special assistant for civil rights to the director of the U.S. Office of Economic Opportunity. He was also a professor of journalism at Howard University and a columnist for several magazines and newspapers. In 1968, Yet had become the first African-American reporter hired by Newsweek magazine, and he quickly became their Washington, D.C. bureau correspondent. But then 3 years later, he wrote a book that exposed high-level plans within the United States to use birth control and abortion as instruments of black genocide. Then immediately after his book was released to the public,
he was killed.
Yet was called into his supervisor's office and fired. At that meeting, he was informed that his dismissal had been orchestrated by the Nixon White House. The next year, Yet told the New York Times that...
See, so when I love Dinesh. Dinesh is a great man. He's a good guy. He has, he's a great guy, man. Can't take nothing from him. But he was absolutely wrong about Nixon, and I'm going to debunk that theory. We're going to finish that. I just want to say, this hotel, this key card goes to the Trump Hotel. The first time we went there, I meant to take it. The first time we went to the Trump, but I didn't get it. The second time we went to the Trump, I got it.
Pressure had been put on Newsweek to get him out of Washington. Then later, despite the fact that his book was selling well, had received at least 2 national awards, and was being used as a textbook in over 100 colleges, yet its publisher dropped him and the book went off the market. What's important to recognize about this situation and others like it was that this family planning cartel was sending a message to those who might have influence within the African American community.
Shut the fuck up.
Whether they were politicians or journalists or college professors or civil rights leaders, they were being warned that when it comes to population control, they only had 2 options. They could either get on board with it or they could keep their mouths shut. And when people like Samuel Yet told them what they could do with their 2 options, they paid a price that few others had the character or the courage to pay.
The copyright to Samuel Yet's book was eventually given back to him. Then, in 1982, Yet used his own money to republish it. The foreword of that edition was written by a well-known civil rights activist and co-founder of both the Harlem Writers Guild and the National Cultural Committee of the NAACP. His name was John Oliver Killens, and, in that foreword, he gave his analysis of the relationship between family planning and the Black community.
The American ruling class had made a hard decision. Americans of African descent would either accept the miserable lot or die. The venerable Saturday Evening Post issued what might be termed as a white paper, in which it warned Black America that they had better understand and accept the fact that absolute freedom and equality were not part of the game plan for them, and that the consequence of non-acceptance would be wholesale genocide. John Oliver Killens, 1982.
The minister's work is also important, and also he should be trained, perhaps by the Federation, as to our ideals and the goal that we hope to reach. We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population, and the minister is the man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members.
In 1939, Margaret Sanger wrote that in a letter to fellow eugenicist Clarence Gamble regarding the American Birth Control League's Negro Project. Gamble was an heir to the Procter & Gamble fortune and a major financial backer of Sanger's. He also provided funding for other eugenics projects and even gave money directly to the North Carolina Eugenics Board that sterilized Elaine Riddick. In fact, in 1947, he called for the expansion of that state's sterilization program, saying that for every feeble-minded person sterilized, 40 more were polluting and degrading the bloodlines of future generations with their defective genes.
Sanger's letter makes it clear that the eugenics movement understood they would need to neutralize the opposition they might get from the church. They also knew that this would be especially crucial within the African American community.
You see, it's easy to find a so-called conservative that's actually a rhino or a globalist or Illuminati puppet or a defector, someone who's definitely not part of our system. And I'll tell you how. You look at a Republican and you find the ones that was receiving money from any one of these death houses, and you found yourself a Republican that is not a Republican, that is in fact a fucking rhino. Because Republicans don't believe in abortions. That's not something that the conservatives believe in. Conservatives believe that children unborn have the right to live so much so as anyone alive, breathing, talking, and walking does. No one thinks or believes that an abortion is the solution to being immature, in some cases, for the youth, or plain irresponsible if you're an adult. Straight up irresponsible. But every conservative believes, every last one of us, that a child has the right to live. Shit. Most conservatives would tell you that a child has the right to live over an adult. Most men you meet, most women you meet, will openly tell you that they'll give their lives up for their kids, and they're not lying when they say it. How do we have such a disconnect with our people, with ourselves? When the fuck did this shit start happening? I just need to know.
Her strategy was to manipulate church leadership into selling the illusion that support for eugenics was not inconsistent with the Christian faith.
Rags Life, shout out to you. Shout out to everybody in the building. Shout out to Activist Granny. Shout out to Maurice. Shout out to Buck 5353, Walter Davis, Ing 1142. Shout out to Palmera Enriquez. Shout out to Annie L. Of course, that's Ass Dropping Jolly. I'm gonna call her Ass Dropping because I'm just used to saying it now. I love you, Annie, but you know I gotta call you Ass Dropping now. All right, Walter Davis, Dina Marie. You know, just everybody in the building. Eric G. Lisa Clemens. I want to, you know, Lucky Sport, Lucky Luciano. You know, everybody in the building on the early check-in, man. I want to thank everybody in the building on the early check-in. Jada Jula TV, shout out to you. Sofa Bloodline, shout out to you. Just Hit the Bong, shout out to you in the building. Shout out to everybody on the check-in, man.
To do this, they would often recruit pastors to be frontmen for eugenics policies and provide them with prepackaged sermons on eugenics. They also held contests in which awards would be given to the ministers who came up with the best pro-eugenics sermons on their own.
Why do you think Barack Obama and other politicians start to talk to you like they're preachers and they're in the pulpit? Because I know you gonna know what I mean when I'm telling you what I say when I'm saying it. Why do you think they do that? Why do you think that they do that? Why do you think that they go and they use that type of approach when talking to black people? Because when black people has been given the truth and the word of God, that's how it was given to them. So when you talk to somebody like you're a preacher, like you have that venomous word of God just spilling from your fucking mouth, and it's all the truth though, and the word of God is just healing motherfuckers. People are so used to having that healing and that anointing love on them when it's time for them to pray, when they need it, that they're hearing it from these politicians, and they're equating these politicians with people who are actually giving the word. And the politicians are the ones that's hiding the words from you. That's why the politicians go, like Barack Obama. That's why he goes and he starts to act like he's a preacher. You hear him talk normal and regular, and then hear him get on stage and then talk to people. Look at it. Look how it is. And anyone who hears me speak, they'll say, that nigga sound the same every time you hear him talk. I don't get all preacher on you and all that other shit. And I'm a minister. I'm a stone cold minister. And I don't do that shit. But the reason why they do is because that's what they were trained to do, and that's how they was fucking blacks' heads up. They was using preachers. And the preachers was telling you, go kill your fucking baby. Imagine that.
This approach proved so effective that an almost identical strategy would be adopted by the American abortion lobby.
In January of 1973, the Supreme Court legalized abortion on demand throughout the United States, and almost immediately, the Religious Coalition for Abortion Rights was formed.
Less than a year earlier, the following conversation had taken place in the Oval Office of the White House. It began on the 30th of March, 1972.
So when anybody tell you that Nixon wasn't a racist, you tell them, on March 30th, 1972, you've heard something on that date that was recorded that begs to differ.
And continued 4 days later on the 3rd of April. This is an actual recording of that conversation. The speakers are the President of the United States, Republican Richard Nixon, and members of his senior staff.
A majority of people in Colorado voted for abortion. I think a majority of people in Michigan voted.
This is former President Richard Nixon. A majority of people in Colorado voted for abortion. I think a majority of people in Michigan are for abortion. I think in both cases, well, certainly in Michigan, they will vote for it because they think what's going to be aborted generally are the black little bastards, are the little black bastards. This is Nixon saying this.
For abortion. I think in both cases, well, certainly in Michigan, they will vote for it because they think that what's going to be aborted generally are the little black bastards.
As I told you, we talked about it earlier, that a hell of a lot of people want to control the Negro bastards.
Earlier, that a hell of a lot of people want to control the Negro bastards. Yeah, isn't that very true?
You know what we are talking about? Population control.
We're talking really.
We're talking really, and what John Rockefeller really realizes, look, the people in what we call our class control their populations. Sometimes they'll have a family of 6 or even 7 or 8 or 9. But it's exemption.
But the people in what we call our class control their population.
You hear that? Listen to what we saying. We're talking really. And what John Rockefeller really realizes, look, the people in what we call our class control their population. Sometimes they'll have a family of 6, 7, or 8, or 9. But it's an exception.
6 or 7 or 8 or 9. But it's an exception. The people who don't.
People who don't control their families are people in. The people that shouldn't have kids. Now that's.
Control their families are people in. The people that shouldn't have kids. Now that's
the staffer. The black population in the city of San Francisco has gone from 3,000 right after World War II to what they represent, to where they represent 30%. We're going to say of the city.
In the city of San Francisco has gone 3,000 right after World War II to where they represent 30% of the population of San Francisco. That's it.
Don't let no one tell you that Nixon wasn't a racist. He was a racist. He was also a globalist. He also was a Nazi that worked for Abe Harum. He definitely worked for Prescott Bush, who was a Nazi member, who worked for a Nazi bank and who helped start the CIA in this fucking country. Yeah, I'm not for the games. I'm not for all the fucking games. I'm not the one to fuck with or play with, and I'm not one of these token niggas you're gonna be able to buy and sell and trade on your market. Bitch, I don't give a fuck. I'm beyond what you thought the Joker is. Believe me when I tell you that. And the only thing that's holding me sane right now is the fact that Donald Trump is in office. Because if he wasn't, and the bitch was in office, you would see a total different side of me that they would be having on the media and the newspapers, and they'll be saying he's insane and he's sick, but I will be doing what will be necessary for this country.
The Religious Coalition for Abortion Rights was originally created with the financial backing of John Rockefeller, and its current president is an African American who was once appointed to the Washington, D.C. City Council by Richard Nixon. In the early 1990s, the organization changed its name and is today known as the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice.
In 1969, a meeting of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, also known as UNESCO, proposed that an American Population Commission be created with a, quote, large budget for propaganda, unquote. 4 months later, Republican President Richard Nixon signed legislation establishing the Commission on Population Growth and the American Future. The bill authorizing this new initiative had been passed with overwhelming support from congressional Democrats and was chaired by John Rockefeller. The executive director of the project was to be Dr. Charles F. Westhoff, who was also a member of both the American Eugenics Society and Planned Parenthood's National Advisory Council.
Another member of this new commission was Dr. Joseph Beasley. In the 1960s, Beasley oversaw an aggressive eugenics program that concentrated on black neighborhoods in New Orleans with the stated intention of lowering welfare costs. This project would eventually be described by Planned Parenthood President Alan Guttmacher as the #1 success story in the history of American birth control movement. It also led to Beasley being elected chairman of the board of Planned Parenthood in 1970. Then in 1975, Beasley was sent to federal prison for conspiring to defraud the U.S. government of $778,000 that had been allocated for the project.
Well, it's okay, because listen, people, when we see them attacking Republicans, we know that the Republicans that they are attacking, like Nixon, that they just exposed, he wasn't a real Republican, people. Republicans don't believe in killing babies, man. That's not something that conservatives believe in. That's against that. That's absolutely against what any conservative believes. It's an abomination before God to kill a fucking baby.
In court,
only devil worshipping globalists and blue bloods do shit like that. Have we had some fucking globalists on our side of the aisle? You motherfucking right we have. But where do they exist? Where's the home of the fucking? Where is the home of the? Where is the home of the globalists? It's the progressive movement. It's the liberal movement. I've showed you this from the very beginning. Listen, people, the Democrats is the reason why we have a federal fucking reserve. Open up your fucking ears to what I'm saying right now. The Democrats are the reason why we have a federal reserve system.
A local black civil rights activist named Sherman Copeland testified that he took payoffs from Beasley for helping him to convince residents of the targeted neighborhoods that birth control was not black genocide.
In 1969, William H. Draper was appointed to represent the United States on the United Nations Population Commission. Draper had once proposed that government-sponsored population control efforts among the poor be accelerated in order to deal with racial unrest and to cure what he called the ghetto problem. Draper was on the governing body of Planned Parenthood and had personally raised more than $4 million.
What do you notice? What do you see that the Democrats and liberals have done since they've come to this country? You ready for me to tell you? They cause nothing but problems and never have a solution for it. They called blacks the Negro problem. That's what they said. They said the blacks are the Negro problem. That's what they said. The Negro problem. We got to get these Negroes out of here. They were saying these niggas. Got to get these niggas out of here. The problem is they brought niggas here. They brought niggas here. Every time you turn around, they talk about there's a problem or issue, but they're not telling you that they're responsible. Excuse me. They're not telling you that they're responsible for the fucking problem or the fucking issue. They never take responsibility for it. Never. They had a program. They wanted to send all the blacks back to Africa. This is all liberals. All Democrats. You went to Africa. You fucking stole as many fucking slaves as you could. You bought as many slaves as you could. You traded for as many slaves as you fucking could. Millions of them fucking died on their way over here. And yet you call them a problem. And you went to go get them. You did that. You decided to have them here and then treat them like shit and then don't educate them. And now you're afraid. You're afraid for your fucking punk ass lily white lives, because if they are woke and they are activated, they will come out to hang you. That's the reason why the feds want me locked up, but I'm not doing shit. So, to you, and to you. Because they want to destroy Black America. They want to destroy poor America. They want to destroy anything American so they can change this whole shit to a global fucking prison. You've seen through this documentary how fucked up they treated black people. They had every opportunity to change their ways. Hundreds of years of it. Hundreds of years of it. Hundreds of years of these motherfuckers being rapists and murderers, sadistic Satanists. Hundreds of years.
$1 million for the organization.
That same year, a New York Times article about Planned Parenthood said the organization's board of directors was dominated by people who were both white and wealthy. The article went on to quote one of those board members as saying, "What it all comes down to is that we want the poor to stop breeding while we retain our freedom to have large families. It's strictly a class point of view."
There's ample evidence that government programs designed for poor black folks emphasize birth control and abortion availability, both measures obviously designed to limit black population. Comedian Dick Gregory, Ebony Magazine, 1971.
It takes little imagination to see that the unborn black baby is the real object of many abortionists. Irma Clardy Craven, Chairman, Minneapolis Commission on Human Rights, and Secretary of the Urban League.
It was not until the mid-60s that blacks began to realize that what was called urban renewal was in fact what one black city planner labeled Negro removal.
Yeah.
Roy Ennis, National Director of the Congress of Racial Equality, Ebony Magazine, 1974.
Back when Ebony was Ebony.
To a large and growing number of 1960s civil rights activists, it became obvious that family planning was just a code word for abortion and birth control, and that it was being pushed by the government as a way to avoid putting money into the black community. This conclusion was reinforced by statements like those of Democratic President Lyndon B. Johnson, who, in June of 1965, stated that every $5 the government spent on population control was worth more than $100 invested in economic growth. Then, at the urging of Republican Congressman George Bush, Johnson became the first U.S. president to endorse federal funding for birth control. In 1966, he would also accept Planned Parenthood's highest award for his policies pushing family planning on foreign countries.
It was at about this same time that political leaders from both parties began to increase their demands that aid to the poor, whether abroad or within the United States, be tied to birth control. In 1965, former Republican President Dwight Eisenhower complained that the United States was spending money to slow the population growth of responsible families, while at the same time provide...
Somebody please do me a favor. Please do me a favor. Because I don't know if I'm going to lose my fucking mind. But I need to honestly look at this shit and just say, hold on. I need to just look at something real quick. I'm sorry. I'm going crazy right now. And you know, because of Al Bundy, I used to like Eisenhower. He used to always say that shit all the time. Remember Al Bundy used to be like Eisenhower. Well, he was another globalist.
Providing financial incentives for ignorant,
I was trying to find Al Bundy saying it.
Feeble-minded, and lazy people to have more babies. He said that history would rightly condemn the United States if we didn't link welfare to family planning. At that time, Eisenhower was the co-chairman of a Planned Parenthood fundraising campaign along with former Democratic President Harry S. Truman.
John Ehrlichman, who was an assistant to President Richard Nixon, wrote that Nixon once told him that African Americans could not really benefit from federal programs because they are genetically inferior to whites. Later, Nixon would label birth control a national priority and sign legislation to make it available as a service of the U.S. government. Then, in March of 1972, the Commission on Population Growth and the American Future, which Nixon had created 3 years earlier with the help of congressional Democrats, began calling for the nationwide legalization of abortion.
The concept that abortion and birth control could be used to save the government money was well established by this point in history.
Why is it legal for you to kill a child in your stomach, but it isn't legal for you to kill your child while it's alive. What's the difference? What's the difference between cocaine and crack? One is cooked with baking soda, and the other one was refined and cut down with quinine. Crack still is cut down with quinine. It's just baking soda added to it. But there's no difference between the fucking two. Because you still need one. The main ingredient, which is cocaine. And it's the same ingredient inside crack. So why is it illegal for you to kill your baby when it's out of the womb, but it's okay for you to kill your baby when it's inside you?
In 1969, Joseph Kershaw, who was a researcher with the U.S. government's Office of Economic Opportunity, stated that the agency had closed.
Why is it that they told all these black folks that they didn't want them on welfare and they didn't want to pay for it and they didn't want to pay for them, so they didn't want to continue to pay for them, so they might as well sterilize them, but they're telling all these illegals to come over here, breed as much as you want, we're going to pay for it.
Closely studied the poverty issue and found that the single most cost-effective way for the government to address it was through family planning. In other words, through abortion and birth control. And that sort of thinking is still very much alive today. On January 25th, 2009, the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, said on an ABC News program that the government's economic stimulus package should include a large increase in spending for population control. She said that this could save the state and federal governments the cost of having to pay for the health care and education of poor children.
Yet this bitch is advocating for a bunch of illegal motherfuckers to come into this fucking country, make babies, eat, sleep, and take your fucking money. But population control means to destroy black America. So I ask you motherfuckers again, every last one of you, why the fuck are you Democrats? Why?
Not surprisingly, Pelosi has a 100% approval rating from Planned Parenthood.
At one time, it was common to hear politicians and elected officials openly talking about the need for population control in the black community, or saying things like $1 spent on family planning is worth $5 spent on economic development. But since we don't hear that sort of thing anymore, it would be easy to conclude that the government is not still involved in black genocide. But that's not the case. It's no longer necessary for the government to be directly involved in black genocide because that's what they hired Planned Parenthood for. I mean, it can't just be a coincidence that at the same time when government population control programs were backing away from specifically targeting black neighborhoods, at that same time, the state and federal funding for Planned Parenthood was being increased by leaps and bounds. To understand the magnitude of the dollars involved here, remember this. By 1970, Planned Parenthood was already the 19th largest health-related fundraising organization in the country. But by year 2000, it had moved into third place behind only the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society. And a major factor in that phenomenal growth was government funding. Basically, what's happened over the last 40 years or so is that Planned Parenthood has taken billions in government money while locating the vast majority of its facilities in minority neighborhoods. And that has not only been a tremendous boost for the eugenics movement, but it has also allowed government-funded family planning programs to target the black population while insulating the government from any direct connection to black genocide.
Now you understand?
One of the places where government money has been used to advance the eugenics agenda has been in the public school system. Although
So when they say government money, they keep saying government money. They keep fucking saying government money, government money, government money, government. It's not the fucking government's money. Like I explained to you before, people, the government doesn't have any money. You have money. It's your money. It's coming out of your pocket. It funds the government so the government can exist. The government don't have shit if the government needs your funding for the government to exist. The government don't got shit. The government don't got no fucking money. Hold the fuck up. Because we doing this documentary, but let me explain to you something. Okay?
Make it perfectly clear. Never mind who you thought I was. I'm Rick James, bitch. Make it perfectly clear. Never mind who you thought I was. I'm Rick James, bitch. Make it perfectly clear. Never mind who you thought I was. I'm Rick James, bitch.
That's the people's money, bitch. That's the fucking people's money. So you mean to tell me black people... Just put the mic away from me, baby. Thank you, baby. I don't want to eat in front of the audience. You mean to tell me black people have been paying for their own fucking demise? This fucking plan is ingenious. And fucking genius. White people, black people, Asian people, Chinese people, everybody's paying for the destruction of black America. Everybody. Even black people. And they call it government funding when they should be saying it's fucking suicide. Suicide on the blacks and a fucking collective genocide on everyone else. Because that's what the fuck this shit is.
Government-funded population control programs can be found in white schools. The evidence is that they are significantly more likely to be targeted at black schools.
One example of this was seen in 1986, when it was discovered that Illinois public schools were not only distributing birth control to children, but that every one of the 50 facilities involved were in minority neighborhoods. When this information was made public, a local African-American pastor organized a campaign to stop the program. Reverend Hiram Crawford labeled the project genocide, saying that the obvious goal was to go after the Hispanic and black population.
That same pattern was also found in Maryland in the 1990s. Even though the state's teen pregnancy rate was higher among white students than black students, when the contraceptive device Norplant was introduced, it was selectively marketed to children as young as 13 in predominantly black schools in Baltimore. The result was that of the first 350 girls implanted at a local middle school, 345 were African American. Then, when Norplant was approved for general distribution, of the first 100 schools selected, all 100 were in minority neighborhoods.
The Norplant contraception device was developed by the Population Council in New York, which had been established in 1952 under the leadership of its president, John Rockefeller. Its next two presidents, Frederick Osborne and Frank Notestein, were both former members of the American Eugenics Society, and Notestein would later serve on the National Advisory Council of Planned Parenthood.
There is an element of racism in the motivation of some Americans who are promoting birth control. It's interesting to note that family planning abroad is being strongly advocated by some senators better known for their anti-civil rights position. United States Congressman Clement Zablocki, March 25, 1966.
If you're going to curb population, it's extremely important not to have it done by the damn Yankees, but by the UN. Because the thing is, then it's not considered genocide. If the United States goes to the black man or the yellow man and says, slow down your reproductive rate, we're immediately suspected of having ulterior motives to keep the white man dominant in the world. If you can send in a colorful UN force, you've got much better leverage. Alan Guttmacher, president of Planned Parenthood and former vice president of the American Eugenics Society, 1970.
4 years after Guttmacher made that statement, America's National Security Council issued a report that was intended to define the United States government's official policy on controlling world population. It was called the National Security Study Memorandum 200, or NSSM 200, and it was formulated in cooperation with the United States Agency for International Development, the U.S. State Department, the Department of Defense, and the Central Intelligence Agency. One of its goals was to establish a strategy for reducing the populations of third world countries so that the United States could have increased access to their natural resources, particularly minerals and metals.
Among the conclusions of NSSM 200 was that no country has reduced its population growth without resorting to abortion. The authors of the report then identified 3 non-governmental agencies that would be funded to carry out the government's population control agenda in the targeted countries. One of those agencies was Planned Parenthood.
One of the tactics specified in NSSM 200 was that we might withhold food aid after a disaster if the countries do not accept the American idea of birth control. And this has happened many times all over the world. One example is the Southern American country of Guyana, which was hit by a hurricane back in 1997. Now, they had turned down abortion and birth control for 12 years straight. But after the hurricane hit Guyana in 1997, the World Bank said, we will not give you any aid unless you legalize abortion and birth control. And that's exactly what they did. I've seen this several times in Africa, where droughts have hit, and the United Nations and USAID will not assist unless they accept birth control. I've been all through Africa myself, and I've seen medical clinics that are full of birth control devices, but no safe motherhood delivery kits. There's no anesthesia. There's not even any bandages there. There's crates and crates of birth control pills and condoms. Now, while our commitment to birth control is going up every year, our commitment to authentic economic development is dropping. So we see less clean drinking water funding, less school funding, see less medical clinic funding. Another example is Haiti. Haiti has been hit by hurricanes several times, and the United States and other countries are saturated with birth control. In Haiti now, any woman, 90% of women at least, can now get access to any kind of birth control they want to, government funded, but less than 20% of the Haitians have access to clean drinking water. Now try to imagine there being a natural catastrophe in a country like Canada or Australia or France or England. And we go in there and we say to them, we're not going to offer you any kind of aid unless you accept our philosophy on birth control and population control. That will be outrageous. But that's our standard operating procedure when we go to a black country after a catastrophe of some kind. You cannot believe that we are going to treat people in a foreign country like this and not treat our own population of African Americans the same way. Consider what happened after Hurricane Katrina. One of the first things we did was bring in birth control and contraception. And as we all know, the hurricane disproportionately affected black families in that area. And I seriously doubt if the same kind of disaster hit a middle-class white area, the first response would be condoms and birth control.
This idea that population control could be used to control a specific population was not unique to NSSM 200. For example, before the Nazis took power in Germany, abortion had been illegal except to save the life of the mother. But under Hitler, the Hamburg Eugenics Court ruled that it would still be illegal for Aryan women, but legal for women of what they called inferior racial stock. According to the court, encouraging eugenic abortions would promote racial hygiene and protect the health of the German people. This new policy eventually led to certain women being threatened with execution if they refused to abort what the Nazis called racially worthless babies.
At about the same time this was going on in Germany, the government of Bermuda was blanketing the island with population control facilities and openly stating that their intent was to limit the numbers of blacks. Then in 1958, blacks in the Caribbean rebelled against a Planned Parenthood-led birth control campaign that was exclusively targeted at non-white residents, while at the same time, prosperous white residents were being encouraged to multiply. Following a similar pattern, a 1965 article in the Pittsburgh Courier newspaper reported that under apartheid, the white South African government was relying on targeted birth control as its primary weapon to reduce the number of blacks in the country.
Unfortunately, we now know that the U.S. government was not immune to this sort of thing either. When 3 pro-choice researchers investigated the original motive behind the creation of the abortion pill, RU-486, what they discovered was that the scientific basis for it was actually developed in the United States during the 1960s by the National Institutes of Health at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. In their 1991 book, these researchers claim to have found data showing that this agency was looking for an inexpensive and effective drug to control the populations of foreign countries that the government had classified as underdeveloped. The abortion pill was to be tested in these environments, and if successful, the plan called for it to then be introduced into Black, Hispanic, and Native American communities in the United States.
In 1977, only 3 years after NSSM 200 was issued, the director of the United States Office of Population, Dr. Reimert T. Ravenholt, publicly stated that it was the U.S. government's intention to sterilize 1/4 of the world's female population.
That's 5 years before I was born.
According to Ravenholt, one of the driving forces behind this campaign was the need to protect American financial and commercial interests.
Ravenholt said that some foreign governments were refusing to give the United States permission to come into their country and control their population. He said that, in those cases, the plan was to be carried out by 2 private organizations with an enormous amount of financial support from the American government. When asked by a St. Louis newspaper to name the 2 organizations, he said that they were the United Nations Fund for Population Activities and Planned Parenthood.
Among government officials who supported the Ravenholt philosophy of using American intervention to control the populations of foreign countries, perhaps the most powerful were Republican President Gerald Ford, Vice President Nelson Rockefeller, and Secretary of State Henry Kissinger. In the mid-1970s, while serving as foreign policy advisor to the Ford-Rockefeller administration, Kissinger personally helped Planned Parenthood set up an abortion counseling program for Vietnam refugees who were being housed at Camp Pendleton Marine Corps Base in California. This was done despite the fact that the vast majority of these refugees were known to be strongly opposed to abortion, and not one of them had ever requested abortion counseling.
At the same time, Kissinger also refused to hold an abortion training program that was being conducted by the Agency for International Development, which operates under the direction of the State Department. Kissinger allowed this project to continue despite numerous complaints that it was in clear violation of U.S. law that specifically prohibited American foreign aid funds from being used for this purpose.
The commitment that Ford, Rockefeller, and Kissinger had for this illegal project may have been a reaction to something Reimert Ravenholt had said a few years earlier. In 1973, he was speaking at a Planned Parenthood national conference where he told attendees that abortion may actually be the most demographically powerful way of controlling population. Ravenholt would eventually be honored by Planned Parenthood for what it called innovation and vision in the population field.
Years ago, a series of USA Today articles documented that there are large multinational corporations on the New York Stock Exchange today that actually got their start in the slave trade, or when slavery ended and Africans could no longer be financially exploited. Many of those same corporations began pouring millions into the eugenics movement. The people they had found so valuable as property, they had little use for as fellow citizens. And again, some of those corporations and foundations and institutions are still around today, and every year they still pour millions into eugenics organizations like Planned Parenthood. In fact, if you look at Planned Parenthood's donor list, it reads like a who's who of corporate America. You also have individual elitists doing the exact same thing. People like Bill and Melinda Gates, Warren Buffett, Ted Turner, and many others have used their own personal fortunes to make sure that the eugenics movement never runs short of money. Of course, if you confront these people or these corporations about their support for organizations like Planned Parenthood, they'll tell you it has nothing to do with eugenics. And if someone is naive enough to believe that, that's fine. But to me, it's like someone saying, yeah, I give a few $1 million a year to the Klan, but I'm not really a racist.
After the abortion pill RU-486 was approved for sale in the U.S., the controversy surrounding it kept the abortion lobby from being able to find an American company to produce it. That forced them to look for a foreign manufacturer. And after an 8-year search, a company owned by the Chinese government agreed to manufacture the drug for the U.S. market. The company's management made the decision after the Rockefeller Foundation agreed to provide financial backing for the project.
Now, here's the one thing I don't understand. Everything made in China usually fucks up, unless it's like some type of U.S. technology, like the MacBook or something. Mostly everything that they make there, it fucks up. You check their bootleg version of iPhone or MacBook, it's gonna fuck up on it. I'm wondering why this pill ain't fuck up.
There's also another
maybe that's why I did, because the original pill was fucking up.
Connection between Rockefeller and RU-486. At the end of World War II, the German chemical manufacturer I.G. Farben was identified as the company that supplied the gas used in the Nazi concentration camps. The gas was called Zyklon B, and evidence later showed that Farben's executives knew how it was being used. In fact, evidence was uncovered to indicate that Farben engineers had actually designed the gas chambers. This led to some of them being tried at Nuremberg for crimes against humanity, including genocide and slavery. Interestingly, I.G. Farben was a financial partner with John D. Rockefeller and Standard Oil of New Jersey in a company called Standard I.G. Farben. In addition, within 3 months after Hitler came to power, the publicity director of Rockefeller Foundation and personal advisor to John D. Rockefeller, a man named Ivy Ledbetter Lee, was assigned the responsibility of directing public relations for I.G. Farben.
After the war, I.G. Farben would change its name to become known as Hercht AG. Today, Hercht is a gigantic multinational corporation with subsidiaries all over the world, including the United States. Ironically, one of Hercht's subsidiaries, Rusal-Uclaf, is the French company that developed RU-486. In other words, the same company that produced the gas used in the Nazi death camps also produced the abortion pill that is now being used in American abortion clinics. And in both cases, there was a known connection to the Rockefeller Foundation.
Now do you see?
On the week he was inaugurated, Bill Clinton received this letter from attorney Ron Weddington. Weddington is the ex-husband of Sarah Weddington, the lawyer who successfully argued for the legalization of abortion in the Roe v. Wade case.
26 million food stamp recipients is more than the economy can stand. You can start immediately to eliminate the barely educated, unhealthy, and poor segment of our country. No, I'm not advocating some sort of mass extinction of these unfortunate people. Crime, drugs, and disease are already doing that. I am not proposing that you send federal agents armed with Depo-Provera dart guns to the ghetto. You should use persuasion rather than coercion. Our survival depends upon our developing a population where everyone contributes. Upon our developing a population where everyone contributes.
To John D. Rockefeller, a man named...
I'm not advocating some sort of mass extinction of these unfortunate people.
The problem is their numbers are not only replaced, but increased by the birth of millions of babies. People who can't afford to have babies. This is what they say. I'm gonna finish reading it all, because there's some things you didn't see.
Crime, drugs, and disease are already doing that. I am not...
You and Hillary are a perfect example. Could either of you have gone to law school and achieved anything close to what you have, had 3 or 4 or more children before you? No, you waited until... This is what I'm saying.
I'm not proposing that you send federal agents armed with Depo-Provera dart guns to the ghetto. You should use
You waited until you were established and in your 30s to have 1 child. That is what sensible people do.
Persuasion rather than coercion. Our survival depends upon...
The biblical extortion is to be fruitful and multiply. To be fruitful and multiply was directed toward a small tribe surrounded by enemies. We are long past that. Our survival depends on our developing a population where everyone contributes. Yes, we don't need more cannon fodder. We need more parishioners. We don't need more parishioners. We don't need more cheap labor. We don't need more poor babies.
Are developing a population where
That's a whistle if I ever heard one for black babies.
everyone contributes. We don't need more cannon fodder. We don't need more parishioners. We don't need more cheap labor. We don't need more poor babies.
2 days after being sworn in as president, Bill Clinton issued an executive order that allowed federally funded agencies to refer low-income women for abortions. He also directed that American dollars could be funneled to organizations that promote abortion in foreign countries.
He said federal dollars, he gave an executive order that federal dollars would be used to coerce, basically to coerce black women to have abortions.
The Aid to Families with Dependent Children program is the worst boondoggle ever created.
And then he locked up all the men. Population control.
When a sullen black woman of 17 or 18 can decide to have a baby and get welfare and food stamps and become a burden to us all, it's time to stop. Dr. Edward Allred, Abortions, 1980.
Edward Allred is the owner of one of the largest chains of abortion clinics in the United States. Not long before Allred made this statement, the Los Angeles Times had reported that his California facilities were handling referrals made by Planned Parenthood.
Even as late as the 1960s, the wealthy elite who made up the eugenics movement never tried to hide the fact that their agenda was driven by financial considerations as much as it was driven by the desire to create racial purity. A good example of this was seen in 1967 when eugenicist and Nobel Prize winner Dr. William Shockley caused a national uproar when he stated that it was a waste of taxpayer money to create better schools and welfare programs for what he called ghetto Negroes. He claimed to have research showing that people of African descent are genetically inferior to whites in intelligence and simply not smart enough to take advantage of programs designed to help them. To save taxpayer money, he proposed that the U.S. government implement forced birth control to lower the reproduction of the inferior classes and then issue certificates to become pregnant that would be sold on the New York Stock Exchange. Shockley was a National Committee member of Planned Parenthood and a featured speaker at least one Planned Parenthood conference.
This nigga just basically said reinstate slavery again. In order for you to have a baby, your baby has to be tossed on the stock exchange. But guess what? That's what happens with your birth certificate anyway in this country. To everybody.
When Florida abortion clinic owner Joyce Tarnow appeared on a local talk show, she gave the following reply when asked what America should do to help impoverished nations that are facing starvation or other natural disasters.
Time is running out for us. In 1968, Dr. Paul Ehrlich wrote The Population Bomb. And in that book, he stated a thesis that what we should be doing is helping those nations that have a reasonable chance of being able to produce their own food supplies. Those that cannot do that, for whatever reason, those people have to just sink or swim on their own. And what we do is try to help those societies become self-sustaining that have a chance to learn how to fish in order to feed themselves.
Wait a minute. Are you I just want to make sure this is clear. Are you advocating, or was he advocating, basically writing off people that have no hope of ever because of the climate or whatever problems of feeding themselves? Sort of like survival of the fittest? Or...
Right. And the thing is...
You agree with that?
Yes, I do. The more people you help to survive, the more people are going to be reproducing and having children beyond what we can reasonably hope to have so that we can educate and house and feed these people.
When Joyce Tarnow retired in 2004, she told a local newspaper that she had tried to get as many people sterilized as are in my way. She also restated her views on foreign aid, saying that the United States should help those countries that can prosper, but let the others wither on the vine. Citing Haiti as an example, Tarnow said that the Haitian people should be made to stew in their own juices because they had destroyed their environment.
In order to really understand the role money plays in the eugenics movement, It is important to keep in mind that its original mission was not to make a profit, but to eliminate a group of people that the elite saw as a financial burden because of things like welfare, crime, taxes, and so forth. And when you look at the wealthy individuals and corporations that fund the modern eugenics movement, you see that this has not really changed. You also see that these people are willing to pay out big money to those who can carry out their agenda. And when Planned Parenthood figured this out, they volunteered for the job. The result is that money has been poured into this organization to the point that Planned Parenthood is now a billion-dollar multinational corporation that operates the largest chain of abortion clinics and birth control facilities in America.
While much of Planned Parenthood's financial success has been because of donations from these wealthy individuals and large corporations, it has also raked in billions from you and me. In 2006 alone, despite having made over $60 million in profit, Planned Parenthood received about $350 million from the U.S. government. And in 2009, Planned Parenthood will receive approximately $1 million every single day from the American taxpayer. That's $1 million every 24 hours. That comes directly out of your paycheck and mine. Now, what you may find interesting is how your money is being spent. To give you just one example, we're going to show you part of a website that Planned Parenthood launched in 2008 called TakeCareDownThere.com. The clip is titled, "I Didn't Spew." And I warn you, many of you are going to find it highly offensive, and you're going to find it especially inappropriate for children, despite the fact that is exactly who Planned Parenthood created it for. As you watch this piece, remember, you helped pay for it.
Whoa, guy, where's the prophylactic? What do you mean? Look, oral sex is still sex, okay? If it's unprotected, you gotta reject it. What? What? But I didn't even spew. Guys, doesn't matter. Look, if you're having sex or you're getting some blowjays or whatever, you need to use a condom, because you could catch a sexually transmitted infection, even if you don't spew.
Can you imagine your kids seeing this? Why is it that they always have to have black men and their masculinity destroyed?
Now, does this clip say anything about how Planned Parenthood sees African Americans? You'll have to judge that for yourself. But there's no doubt that if this same video had been made by a bunch of white supremacists or the Ku Klux Klan or some neo-Nazi group, we would all understand the symbolic message behind it.
In 2007, Live Action Films of California conducted an undercover investigation of Planned Parenthood offices in several states. Under the direction of the organization's president, Lila Rose, the goal of the project was to determine whether Planned Parenthood officials would accept financial donations on the condition that the money would only be used to eliminate African Americans. The following clips are from the actual recordings of those conversations.
When I underwrite abortion, does that apply to minorities too?
If you specifically want it to underwrite an abortion for a minority person, you can target it that way. You can specify that that's how you want it spent.
Okay, yeah, because there's definitely way too many black people in Ohio, so I'm just trying to do my part.
Okay, whatever.
Well, blacks especially need abortions too, so that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, for whatever reason, we'll accept the money.
So the abortion could be, I could give money specifically for a black baby. That'd be the purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. If you wanted to designate that you wanted your gift to be used to help an African American woman in need, then we would certainly make sure that gift was earmarked specifically for that purpose.
Great, because I really face trouble with affirmative action, and I don't want my kids being disadvantaged, against black kids. I just had a baby. I want to put it in his name. You know, so that's definitely possible.
Oh, always.
So, would it be possible for me to donate that money specifically for these minority groups so that they could have access to abortions?
Yes, it would be.
Wonderful. And could I specify that abortion be done, or those abortions be done for a particular minority group, or how does that work?
If you wish, you can.
Okay. So for example, the black community in Tulsa, because I have connections with that, would it be possible to give the money specifically for that?
You sure can.
Wonderful. Great. So can I give you my credit card number?
Yes.
Wonderful. Just one more thing. The abortions will be done specifically for black community abortions.
I will mark it in such a way that definitely it will.
Oh, great. On a black baby.
Yes.
Thank you. Great.
The exact amount we charge right now is $450 for an abortion.
Okay, $450.
Mm-hmm. And we can definitely designate it for an African American.
Wonderful. Okay, and if I want to make to fund, because this is a if I wanted to help fund multiple abortions, could you also specify that this could be done for a specific group?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm really excited, because I really faced trouble with affirmative action. I don't want my kids to be disadvantaged, against blacks in college, and the less blacks out there, the better. So.
Yeah, it's a strange time for sure.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, thank you very much, Jeremy. And if you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call. My extension is 304.
When this material was released to the public, Planned Parenthood's defense was to claim that the employees who made these statements were not reflecting the organization's corporate position. But in 1986, Planned Parenthood's national president, Faye Wattleton, made the following statement during an interview on CNN.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Dorn, and if I may finish, we have received contributions from people who want to support us because they want all welfare mothers and all black women to stop having children.
What Ms. Wattleton was conceding in this CNN interview, and what live-action films found in their undercover investigation, was acknowledged years before by a previous Planned Parenthood president. During a speech in Philadelphia in January 1966, Planned Parenthood President Alan Guttmacher stated that some of his colleagues appeared to have racial motives for their involvement with the organization. Not surprisingly, one of Guttmacher's acquaintances later warned him that in the future, he should not be making comments like that in public. The person who gave that warning obviously understood that Planned Parenthood's racial agendas and attitudes are best kept out of the public. And that has been a philosophy that Planned Parenthood has embraced for many years.
To this day, Planned Parenthood has never disavowed either Margaret Sanger or her plans for targeted population control. In fact, the organization's highest award is still named after her, and has often been given to people associated with the American eugenics movement, including John D. Rockefeller in 1967. Then, in 2009, the award was given to Hillary Clinton, who said in her acceptance speech that she was in awe of Margaret Sanger and admired her vision. She also announced that the U.S. government was increasing its funding for United Nations family planning programs by 130%.
Frankly, I had thought that at the time Roe was decided, there was concern about population growth, and particularly growth in populations that we don't want to have too many of. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, United States Supreme Court Justice, July 2009.
Do you understand?
When it comes to exposing eugenics in modern America, that quote by Ruth Bader Ginsburg is the smoking gun. I mean, here is the most radical advocate of legalized abortion that's ever been on the Supreme Court, openly admitting in the New York Times that the real issue was never women's rights or privacy or reproductive freedom or being pro-choice. No, what she is saying is that the driving force behind making abortion legal was to exterminate certain groups of people. In other words, it was the Supreme Court's way of legitimizing a philosophy that's been pushed for the last 150 years by these ultra-wealthy elitists who believe they have the right to eliminate anyone that they have decided is inferior. And Planned Parenthood became the golden child of these people because they're the ones who figured out how to put this philosophy into practice. It was Planned Parenthood who figured out that the way to make eugenics work is not to kill people, but to convince the targeted group to commit cultural suicide. And the way you do that is with birth control and abortion. And Planned Parenthood has been successful at this because, unlike other eugenics organizations, they have always been able to keep their agenda hidden, not only from the public, but often from their own people. I mean, there are Planned Parenthood employees and volunteers all over this country who I'm convinced have no idea what they're actually mixed up in. But when Ruth Bader Ginsburg said what she said in July of 2009, she let the cat out of the bag. She made it clear that abortion was legalized in order to eliminate people that she and other elitists just like her don't want there to be too many of. And I think we all know who they're talking about. The fact is, when you actually sit down and research this issue, what you come to see is that if blacks had never been stolen out of Africa and brought here in chains, there would never have been a eugenics movement in the first place. There would never have been government sterilization boards. No one would have ever suggested putting birth control chemicals in the water supply. No one would have ever called for the legalization of abortion. And you would have never heard the terms population control and family planning. I mean, any way you cut it, if slavery had never existed, Planned Parenthood would not exist today.
In January of 2010, the state of Pennsylvania issued a report showing that even though less than 11% of its female population is black, they account for over 40% of the abortions performed in the state. Then, on February 14, 2010, Planned Parenthood opened a new abortion clinic in a section of Portland, Oregon, that has a white population of under 2%. That facility is located on Martin Luther King Boulevard. Meanwhile, in Houston, Texas, Planned Parenthood is building the largest freestanding abortion clinic in the United States. Scheduled to open in April of 2010, this massive facility is being built in the middle of 4 neighborhoods whose residents are overwhelmingly Black and Hispanic.
We need to remember that over 60 years ago, a man who could today be called the father of modern-day eugenics proposed that population control clinics be concentrated in minority neighborhoods. And now today, the vast majority of Planned Parenthood clinics are located in our neighborhoods. Are we really so naive to believe that this is all a coincidence? We all know that drugs, alcohol, and tobacco are devastating, especially in the Black community. We know that the big corporations target us with the ads and the marketing campaigns. And yet, we don't notice that Planned Parenthood is doing the very same thing. We need to pay attention to the fact that in the 1960s, when we as African Americans began to demand our civil rights, for the first time in American history, there began a widespread cry in our government for legalized abortion. Was that coincidence too? Or could it be that when we said we would no longer sit on the back of the bus, a place was being reserved for us down at the abortion clinic?
For most people, it may be hard to conceive that the ethnic cleansing going on today through legal abortion began with the fear of freed slaves. But as you have seen, that is exactly what happened. When colonization failed, Charles Darwin and Francis Galton were there to tell the world that people of African descent were just one small step above the ape. And white elitists embraced that philosophy, not because they had studied it and found it to be true, but because it gave them the permission they needed to wipe us out. And that launched a chain of events that quickly took on a life of its own. Every time one eugenics strategy failed, another was invented to take its place. It was a pattern that would be continued from one generation to the next until they finally discovered the strategy that worked.
You know, When you study the Nazi Holocaust, you can see these films of Jews running into ditches to be shot in the head. You can even see films of them actually walking into the gas chambers. And it's tempting to ask yourself why they didn't fight back. I mean, if you're going to be killed anyway, what do you have to lose? Perhaps the answer is that they simply could not believe it was really happening. Maybe the normal human mind is just not wired to accept that your fellow man is capable of such senseless brutality on such a scale, even when you see it happening with your own eyes. As African Americans, we need to recognize that we are doing the same thing. We need to understand that terms like pro-choice and reproductive rights and family planning are nothing more than marketing slogans. They're just code words that organizations like Planned Parenthood use to hide the fact that we're voluntarily submitting to the will of those who have been trying to exterminate us since the day slavery ended.
At the beginning of this program, we told you that the Ma'afa didn't end with the freeing of the slaves, and that, in fact, it hasn't ended yet. Now you've seen the rest of the story. Now you know that legalized abortion is more than just a crime against humanity. It is also the continuation of a 150-year-old racial agenda that was founded in Black genocide. And I hope that you have also come to see that as long as abortion remains legal, the Ma'afa cannot end. Thanks for watching.
I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Black Genocide. And we do have some news that we could probably get into. We got a few minutes, like 10 minutes.
Good evening and welcome to...
Let's do it like this.
Check it out now. It's all over, people. It's all over. Now, listen, ladies and gentlemen, as we look back on the career of Tekashi 6ix9ine, there's a lot of lessons to be learned here, okay? First and foremost, it's very important to know that a lot of times what makes you successful is a lot of times what brings you down. And if you don't understand that, you probably won't understand this whole story. The people that surround you, that help build the image, that support you, is a lot of times what continues and fuels the same thing which brings you down. Hip-hop, I keep saying, it's a very hypocritical genre. He's fake, he's fake, he's fake.
Now, he's saying all of this shit, but he befriended this little nigga. And I don't have nothing wrong with Shorty, but he befriended him. He has so many videos up here of him. He's part of the problem. When the kid that got murdered, rest in peace to him, Texion, he was involved in something between this kid and another kid where they brought his name up. And XX said, hey, you guys are being negative, and I wish you guys more positive energy, but I'm doing something positive. He basically just, went at it a good way. And I had an old video back about this. And this dude, academics, like, oh, he punked out like a bitch. He didn't say nothing about who said his name, said the third. Well, why would he have to? He doesn't want to involve himself in the drama. Academics love the fact that this kid was running around saying the things that he was saying. And he went and made a video, rap song. He's been at 6ix9ine's home. He's been and met him. I mean, he was his friend. But listen to how he talks about how it's all up and how he's saying how it's all going to end and how it always ends. But at the end of the day, you was making a lot of money off of everything you did when it came to videos of this young guy right here, man. This is what I mean, where we got to be more diligent, people, about these vultures out here trying to use us.
Realize maybe he did some stuff, then he's dumb. Now, again, listen, me being in a very peculiar position, because you're going to see this angle, and I'm going to get it out of the way now, right? A lot of people are like, well, Act, you were around him, you're cool. How could you see your man go down like this? Man, I had a conversation with 6ix9ine, and this was probably in February, okay, in a very dusty Brooklyn apartment, and I said, bro, you know where all this leads. You know how associating yourself with certain people. You know how carrying yourself in a certain way. You know how pushing certain type of things, violence. And you know if you continue that, where that leads. And ultimately, he made a choice. That's not something I could control, okay? Regardless, that's still my friend. I don't care, right? Because my friendship with him was not that. My friendship with him was on a one-on-one level, and I still am friends with him. So while I do this story, I have to explain why people are going to say, yo, Ak, why didn't you prevent it? I can't tell him how to operate on the street level. He only really ever deferred to me for advice in promotion and also career and music advice. Street shit, how they handled beefs, if they wanted to beef, other issues pertaining to the street, believe me, academics was not consulted, nor would my opinion ever be listened to. Now, I had that conversation with him back then because I saw the inner workings of how things were going on around him. However, I'm not the person who could stop anything. I'm not no one's father. I'm only a friend. Gave him the advice back then, and ultimately he made his own choices. So I'm not here also to cop pleas for him. And if you think I'm going to do that, I'm not. Now, let's get on to the indictment that was on seal today. Tekashi 6ix9ine was arraigned along with 4 other people, and the people that you would know, Shotty, who was rumored to be his manager, Crippy, the guy who got shot at the thing with the executive at the restaurant after he beat the case, or not beat the case, but he got off on probation. So the guy who got shot in the stomach, he got charged again, and also Shotty got charged with 6ix9ine. Now I'm going to make this short and sweet, because there's other gentlemen included in this, and they're really trigger men for random shootings. And if you know about 6ix9ine, there's a bunch.
And they're really trigger men for random shootings. Just put it for 30 seconds, baby. And they just trigger men for for random shooting. So first of all, he's already snitching. He's already dry snitching. It's another problem I have with academics, man. Like, this is what I'm saying. Him, Vlad TV, all of these dudes, interviewing these dudes, befriending these dudes, and everything else. If you think that the feds, listen to me. If the feds approach academics and ask him anything whatsoever, he told them. Do you see guns there? If he did, he told them. Do you see any hardcore drugs there? If he did, he told them. And he's not going to say that he told them. He is not cut for the streets. If you don't think the feds went to DJ Academics and talked about him and talked about Tekashi 6ix9ine, you fucking crazy. This nigga is his direct friend. He's still saying he's his friend. And in his current situation, and with academics being as famous as he is, it's not a smart thing to even say. You don't have to say you're his friend. You can just be his friend. So why feel the need to reiterate it? Is it to take some type of heat off of you? I'm just saying. Because although you may not have had him doing shit that he was doing and prevented him from doing shit that he was doing, you could have told him that the feds talked to you about him. Could have did that much. That you could have did. Because they had your phone tapped with his. They had his phone tapped. It's preposterous for you to sit here and make this video as if people around you are sleeping at the wheel.
Shootings that have happened or occurred, again, at people that he was in problems with, and again, maybe you have not connected to him. However, the cops have connected those shootings to him. Now, let me just go through the charges, and I'll tell you exactly what he's facing and what the other guys are facing. But we'll really focus on him, okay? Now, really, the maximum he's facing is life in prison, okay? And it's for like a couple of charges, but the main charge is using or carrying a firearm during and in relation to possessing a firearm in furtherance of a crime of violence which was discharged. Basically, a shooting, okay? Now, are they saying that he did the shooting, whatever shooting this is in question? No, but they're saying basically and this is why it's called a RICO charge. So he was really brought in on a RICO charge, RICO and weapons charge. And the RICO charge has these statutes in it to show why it's RICO, right? So they're saying Basically, somebody did a shooting, and they're saying it was a criminal organization thing, and they're pinning 6ix9ine in that criminal organization. They're using 9 Trey Bloods. If you don't know, Treyway is a slang of 9 Trey Bloods, and they're saying 6ix9ine and the other guys are all a part.
Then this nigga, he goes and he verifies that Treyway means non-Trey blood. He verifies it for the FBI and for the whole world because he's his friend, and he's basically spilling a whole bunch of gang information and shit that may not even be fucking true. But because he's close to 6ix9ine, the government can use this right now, because this stupid motherfucker put this up, and use it against his so-called homie that's in jail. This video hurts 6ix9ine more than anything else it's supposed to do for him.
Part of 9 Trey Bloods in this incident, and we're all complicit to some detail. Now, the max he's facing on that is life imprisonment, and the minimum, if he's convicted, is 25 years in prison. Okay? He's also facing, for conspiracy, 20 years in prison. He's also facing another 20 years for a violent crime in aid of racketeering for another incident. He's facing 3 years for another racketeering charge. And also, he's facing another life imprisonment charge for another incident where there was shots, or actually not shots, but there was a weapon brandished and it was a robbery. Okay? And that was a different incident. But all these carry a life imprisonment maximum. For that particular one, where the robbery it was taking place, they say he could get, if he's convicted, he would get minimum 7 years. Okay? And then pretty much the other charge that he's facing is another violent crime of racketeering for another incident at the Barclays, and pretty much that would be 3 years in jail. Now, it's 3 different incidents that they're really charging him with. One where Casanova's video shoot was shot up, another where there was a robbery, and another where there was a shooting at the Barclays. Here's the thing. The weapons charge, okay. You know what I mean? He could get a couple years if he just cops a plea to that, because pleas are going to be copped. Nobody wants to really go in court and really have your fate be determined by a judge and a jury, and you could spend life imprisonment. If somebody gives you 7 years, you're probably going to take it. Okay, maybe with good behavior, and maybe after serving the mandatory minimum, maybe get out in 5. Whoever knows, right? However, what is going to be important here are some of these charges. There was one charge where someone was actually shot, a innocent bystander, and they charged all of those dudes for that crime, right? If they get everybody convicted on that, everybody's going to do probably 10 to 20 years. So I look forward to deals being cut. You never know if there's informants going to be in the case, but I'm just putting it out there that this is a situation.
You never know if there's going to be informants in the case, right, Act?
Where he could get out of jail in as little as 3 years, right? Again, this is if he doesn't go through trial. And even if he goes through trial, he might even spend 3 years, right? We haven't even talked about bail yet. But he could be incarcerated for 3 years all the way to life. Okay? Now, again, in reality, when you look at some of these charges, it's more like 20 to life or 25 to life. If he got convicted for the 3, most likely one of the 20 would also stick as well. Very unfortunate case. As I will say, a lot of people will make these accusations.
And now he's trying to get ahead of it. Smart dude. But here's the thing. He has a platform of over 1 million subscribers. He has a platform of over 1 million subscribers. Over 1 million subscribers. He could have got on here and said, hey, that's my little homie. You know, he was doing a lot of media stunts, but in no way, shape, or form was he a leader or none of that shit. He was somebody they was protecting. You know, I mean, he was somebody that was being protected by them. You know, he was paying them. You know, he got tired. He tried to get away from them. That's why he fired everybody. He wanted to disassociate himself from everything because he seen how negative it was going. If you're gonna do that, if you're gonna dry snitch, you might as well dry snitch for your homie for real. Help him out. Because the whole world knows 6ix9ine ain't no gangster. The whole world know that the hood held him down. He didn't tell people what to do. He wasn't that kind of guy. But yet and still, this dude Academics wouldn't say that on his channel. Nope, not at all. He made it seem like the lights is out for his homie. So-called homie. Hey, man, listen. I love you guys. I ain't going to keep you long, but keep you short. We're going to keep it within the realm. We 10 minutes over because I was a little time short getting in here. Stay healthy. Stay safe. Stay American. And remember, the only people around you that can hurt you are the ones you let around you. We see that every single day. Every day. Different instances, whether it's POTUS or even this young brother here that's behind me on the screen. At the end of the day, you have to analyze things for what they are. There is a system set up to destroy you while allowing you to destroy yourself. They come just pick up the pieces just to take you away. This young man is unfortunate that his time was this short, but he has a daughter that now won't have a father, and she'll have to go see him behind bars. So he has money. We don't know how long that money's going to last, and it's going to hold his commissary down. And it's not going to be an easy ride for him either. That I can promise you. Fuck every globalist. Every last one of you. Every last one of you. And fuck the other side, bitch. We don't care.